Hello, my name is Carolyn Williams. I am the Community Development Strategist for Cascade Life Alliance. If you're watching this video, that means that you would like to see what our Teach It Yourself presentation actually looks like. So this will be a recording of me doing the presentation. Obviously, keep in mind that I don't have any students with me, so there will be moments where I will ask questions to the fake audience and you won't hear any responses. But just know that that's how I would be doing it in a classroom. So I hope that you all enjoy and can get a sneak peek into what this presentation may look like. Thanks for watching. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, students. My name is Carolyn. I am the Community Development Strategist for Cascade Life Alliance. Before we get started, before I introduce fully who I am and what I do, what we're talking about, I just want to start off with a warm-up question to get our brains moving a little bit. Think about people saving lives. Who comes to mind? And you can just raise your hand. Okay, yeah, we got doctors. Yep, totally. Nurses. For sure. How about you in the back? Yep, Superman. Yep, absolutely. We got some superheroes for sure. Yeah, EMTs, lifeguards. Yep, absolutely. These are all really good examples. These are some of the ideas that people typically come up with. And the reason that we like to start off with this question is because something that may not come to mind as often or as quickly for people are organ, eye, and tissue donors. And that's why we have this presentation for you all to talk about how organ, eye, and tissue donation saves lives. So not everyone maybe wants to be a doctor or an EMT or a lifeguard or a scientist. And there are other ways that you can save people's lives. And this can apply to every single person, and this applies to you. So you might be asking yourself, why should you care? Who here is thinking about going to the DMV or has already gone to the DMV to get their permit, their license, or their ID? Okay, some of you, yeah. So when you go to the DMV, they're going to ask you the question if you would like to register as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. And so we don't want that very moment to be the first time you've ever considered that question. Maybe you don't even know what that is or what that means. We don't want people saying yes to things they don't know what they're signing up for. And at the same time, we don't want people to be saying no to things that are maybe rooted in misconceptions or misinformation. And so this presentation is to give you all the facts that you need so that you can make an informed decision, because this is going to be one of the first decisions that you get to make as an adult, as a young adult. It's a lot of responsibility, and we want you to feel confident in that decision. If you are not going to the DMV, absolutely no worries. There are other ways to sign up and get involved in this. At the end of this presentation, we have some rack cards with a QR code. You can scan those with your phone and you can register online. So this applies to everyone in this room. So just some brief context. When you think about the organ, eye, and tissue donation system in the state of Oregon, these are the 4 organizations that really make that up on the donation side. So Cascade Life Alliance is responsible for organ procurement. They are the Organ Procurement Organization, or OPO. Donate Life Northwest is their partner in community outreach and education. They help educate students and community members about this topic. Vision Gift is the eye bank responsible for cornea donation, and Solvita is the tissue bank. So these 4 organizations make up the entire system. Before we get started with the content, we want to give you a content warning because we are going to be talking about some sensitive topics. We will be talking about death, medical procedures, body parts. And so this may prompt grief, memories of medical trauma or mistrust, fear, disgust, honestly, any emotion. And we can have 2 things be true at the same time. You can feel 2 emotions at the same time. You can feel really uncomfortable and maybe uneasy talking about this. You know, death is never easy to talk about. And you can also understand that it's really important. You can feel inspired and educated on a really important topic. So what we encourage from you all is to take care of yourself, take care of others, and reach out for support if you're needing some additional help. If you need to take a step away, talk to your teacher, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Any questions about that before we begin? Okay, great. Well, we can get started. So what is organ, eye, and tissue donation? Raise your hand if you've heard about this topic before. Okay, Raise your hand if you've never heard about this topic before. Okay, so we'll split. Who here has maybe heard about organ donation, but hasn't heard about eye and tissue donation? Who hasn't heard about eye and tissue? Yeah, okay. I feel like that is way more common. Usually we just say organ donation and we don't talk about eye and tissue donation as much. So within this presentation, we're going to talk about all three. So organ, eye, and tissue donation is the opportunity to donate organs, eyes, and tissues after death to save or heal the lives of people who need them. So one organ donor can save up to 8 lives, and one eye and tissue donor can save or heal up to 125 lives. So obviously those two numbers can be pretty different. In this presentation, we're going to start with organ donation and then work our way to eye and tissue donation afterwards. So when we think about one organ donor saving up to 8 lives, the reason for that is that there are 6 recoverable organs for transplant. Do you want to take a guess for what those 6 organs are? You can raise your hand, shout it out. Okay, yeah, we've got heart. Definitely. I heard liver. Yep, definitely. Okay, that's 2. Lungs. What's really cool about the lungs is that since you've got 2 of them, they can go to separate recipients depending on the need. So that actually makes up 4 of the lives. 3 organs though. Okay, kidneys, same deal. Kidneys can be separated to different recipients. Looking for 2 more. Okay, I heard stomach. So that's a great guess. We actually don't transplant stomachs as of right now. That's not one of them, but it's a great guess. One of the ones that I am looking for though is connected to the stomach. Yes, intestine. You can transplant and recover the small intestine. Okay, looking for one more. This one's a little tricky. Think about sugar, blood sugar, insulin. Starts with a P. Yep, pancreas. Yes, very, very nice work. So we've got heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, intestines, and pancreas. So like I mentioned before, there are 6 recoverable organs, but you can save 8 lives. And the reason for that is that your lungs can go to separate recipients and your kidneys can go to separate recipients. 6 types of organs, 8 lives that can be saved. So before we talk about the process of organ donation, we first need to understand why organ donation exists in the first place. And it all begins with someone needing an organ transplant. So needing an organ transplant means that you have gone into organ failure. And organ failure occurs when one or more of a person's organs stop working properly. So if you can imagine your heart is not working properly, do you think you're going to be feeling good? Do you think you're going to be living your best life? No. If your kidneys are failing, a lot of the time you're going to have to be hooked up to a dialysis machine so that it can, filter your blood for you. Do you think that's going to feel good? No. Obviously, as you can imagine, going through organ failure is an enormous deal. For a lot of people, it means that a transplant is the only way that they can survive. So it is incredibly stressful, incredibly traumatic. And other things that people experience who are going through organ failure are that they're very sick, they have intense fatigue, they're on a very strict diet, can't have a lot of sodium, can't have energy drinks. On dialysis, like I mentioned before, they may be housebound or bedbound, can't go out and travel, hang out with their friends, go outside. And like I said before as well, a lot of these people need a transplant to survive. And so when you're in organ failure, ideally you're going to join what's called the National Transplant Waitlist, which is managed by UNOS. And UNOS is the organization that's called United Network for Organ Sharing. And what UNOS does is they match transplant candidates with passed away or deceased organ donors based on a number of factors. So think of this like a puzzle piece, if you see that image in the background. Not every single person is going to match perfectly with every donor. There are a lot of things that need to match so that people can actually get the transplant that they need. And so the factors that are considered with matching deceased donors and waiting recipients are blood type, those have to match. Body size has to be compatible, how sick the transplant patient is, tissue type, length of time on the wait list, how long have they been waiting for a transplant, and how close are they to the donor location-wise. If someone lives really far down in South Oregon, they're going to have to travel a few hours to get to their nearest transplant center. And so that is one of the factors considered with trying to receive a transplant and where the donor passed away. So a lot of these factors are considered, which makes diversity really important. We want to have a really diverse donor pool so that people that are waiting for a transplant can find their perfect match as soon as possible. However, factors that are never considered, the media really likes to make it seem like these are considered factors in the matching process, but they're not, are race and ethnicity, gender identity, income, celebrity, and social status. And we especially want to focus on those last three. When we think about rich and famous people, there's a big misconception out there that, some senator can call up the transplant center and be like, hey, my kid needs a kidney. Like, can you bump me up to the top of the wait list? And that is absolutely not true. It is not a system like that is based on wealth. It is based on all of the factors on the left, and it's completely anonymous. People who are on the wait list, people who are deceased, end up becoming a number, and it's an algorithm that just matches them according to these factors. And so maybe you all have heard about Selena Gomez. Who here has heard of Selena Gomez? Yeah, she's very famous. She, is on Disney Channel. She received a kidney transplant in 2017, and the media focused a lot on her kidney transplant. And they really liked to create this perception that she jumped the wait list. So kind of creating this narrative that because she's rich and famous, she had the means and the tools to kind of cut the line and get a kidney much quicker than other people who have been waiting. The reality is that she got a direct donation from a living kidney donor. And so she received a transplant from one of her really close friends. And so when you receive a donation from a living donor, you don't need to go through the national transplant waitlist. It's a completely different program, a completely different process. And so if you think about other types of transplants, for example, a heart transplant, living donation is not an option. So you will have to wait just like everybody else and only be considered with those factors that I mentioned that were on the left. So we've talked about what it might be like to need a transplant on an individual level, but let's zoom out and look at the big picture to look at how many people this affects. So the number of people that are currently on the wait list in the United States, 100,000 plus. So actually, as of July 2026, that number is now up to 109,000. So the wait list is enormous. So if anyone has been to Reser Stadium, Autzen Stadium, or Moda Center, yeah, anyone been to any of these stadiums? Totally. If you haven't, no problem at all. You can see in these pictures, you can imagine all of these, football or basketball stadiums. They have an enormous capacity. Think about every single one of these seats filled with an individual. Think about all three of those and combine them. That still would be less than the number of people that are on the national transplant wait list. And so again, not only is this affecting the individual in the seat, think about their family, think about their friends, their community members, their teachers, their loved ones, their doctors, whoever it is. This is an enormous amount of people that are impacted by this every single day. And all of these people have to be burdened with the stress of not knowing whether they will receive a transplant in time while being extremely sick. And so the number of people that die each day while waiting for a transplant is 13. 13 people die per day. And that is because we have a shortage of organ donors. We do not have enough organ donors to be able to meet the need for transplant. And so think about how many people are in this classroom. And so there's probably about like 30 of you. So this half of the classroom, imagine that you all one day don't wake up because you didn't get the transplant that you needed to survive. And that's not only your life lost. Think about your parents, again, your friends, your teachers, your family. It's a village, and it really takes everyone to understand the enormous impact that this could have. And a new person is added to the wait list every 8 minutes. So again, how many people are going to be added by the end of this class period? We're together for 90 minutes today. That's 11 people by the end of this period. By the end of the day, even more. It can be up to, 180. So this is something that is constantly growing. People are not getting the transplants that they need to survive. And we need more people to sign up as organ donors so that we can meet that need and save more lives. And so this affects so many people, and you have the power to help. So just one individual's decision to register as an organ donor can mean everything. So now we'll look at the process of how someone becomes a donor. So I'm going to show you this quick video. This is actually created by the United Network for Organ Sharing, or UNOS, and it's going to give you a brief overview of what our organ donation system looks like and what the process looks like.
Organ donation and transplantation is a complex process requiring the expertise and collaboration of thousands every day. The journey begins with the generosity of one person, the organ donor. Organ donors are hospitalized patients on ventilators whose brains or hearts have stopped functioning, tragic injury, but whose organs are still viable. After means to save the patient's life, the hospital contacts their organization, or OPO. OPO staff are trained to counsel patients' families at the worst moment. If the patient is a registered organ donor, the OPO helps the family understand the process they're about to go through. If the patient is not registered, the OPO offers the family the option to donate. This is a transformative decision. A single donor can save up to 8 lives. Eye and tissue donors can heal even more. Once authorization is obtained, the OPO begins working to match the organ with a critically ill patient. Currently, more than 100,000 patients are on the national waiting list, maintained by the United Network for Organ Sharing, or UNOS. OPO staff first determine if the donor's organs are viable for transplant, and then enters their medical information into the UNOS database, which generates a list of best matches based on a variety of clinical factors. The OPO contacts the transplant hospitals of matched patients, where doctors will determine if the donated organ is right for their patient. Once an organ has been accepted, the clock starts ticking, because organs remain viable outside the body for only a short time. The organs are then respectfully recovered from the generous donor. The OPO arranges to transport the donated organ to the transplant hospital to help a patient in need. Once the medical team transplants the organ, a life is saved. A donor, a willing family, and life-saving organs are essential to the transplant journey. It takes place 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Any questions about that video? Perfect. So that was the organ donation process. And in the video, it talked about eye and tissue donation happening afterwards. And so because it doesn't go as in depth in that video, I'm going to give you a little bit of information for what that process entails. And so one eye and tissue donor can save or heal up to 125 lives. And why do you think that eye and tissue donors can save or heal up to so many more people's lives than organ donation? What do you all think? Yep, because there's more tissue than organs. Yep, absolutely. Other guesses? No problem. So when we think about organ donation versus eye and tissue donation, there are really strict criteria in place to become an organ donor. And so less than 1% of all deaths actually result in organ donation in the United States. And the reason for that is that people have to pass away in a hospital and be connected to a ventilator. So think about just those two factors alone. That's going to rule out most people. It's really specific. And the reason that we need those two things is because your organs, in order for them to remain viable for transplant, need that constant blood flow and oxygen. So although you are passed away, brain dead, most likely, when you're connected to a ventilator, it keeps your lungs contracting so that that blood and oxygen can remain flowing through your body. And it also is limited to 6 transplantable organs. When we look at eye and tissue donation, however, you don't need to die in a hospital. You can die outside of a hospital, and you don't need to be connected to a ventilator. And so your eye and tissue stay viable for longer without that blood and oxygen flow. And you also have so much more tissue that you could possibly donate. And so that's the reason why there's that difference in how many lives can be impacted. So what eye and tissue can I donate? You can donate connective tissue, your cornea and sclera, your skin, tendons, ligaments, cartilage, heart valves, arteries, veins, bone, nerves. There are so many tissue that you can donate, and they can be used in such different and creative ways. So this is another diagram showing all the different tissue that you can donate. You can see that there's a lot here. So let's first start with eye donation or cornea donation. So if we look at the reasons why people need cornea transplants, a lot of the time it's because of eye trauma or a chemical spill or a burn. So if you look at the before image, this is someone who's received very intense injury to their cornea. You can see it's cloudy, it's distorted, it's blocked vision. So this person has most likely lost their vision, either completely or mostly. Another reason you might need a cornea donation or a transplant is because of a condition called keratoconus. This is when your cornea is misshapen and distorts into like a cone-like shape. And that is something that you can see in that image. It's kind of bulging out like that. What you can do for people who have experienced either of those things is receive a cornea transplant. And so they will remove the damaged cornea and then replace it with a healthy one from a donor. And so damaged cornea is removed, the donor cornea is in place, they do sutures, and boom, you have been restored with your vision. So think about how incredible and how impactful that might be if you yourself go through a trauma, you lose your vision, but because someone said yes to donation, you are able to see again. How impactful that would be. Let's talk about skin grafts next. So skin grafts are one of the most common tissue transplants, and these are life-saving transplants. Not only healing, absolutely life-saving, because skin is an external organ. We cannot survive without our skin. So for people who have suffered from severe burns, skin grafts essentially act as a biological bandage to heal that wound. And so this is an image of a skin graft. This is a donor's tissue. It's been perforated to help oxygen flow to the wound and prevent infection. It helps regulate body temperature. And again, it replaces and repairs the lost tissue from the burn. So this is absolutely life-saving. Now we can talk about tendon and ligament repairs, which is also a very common form of a tissue transplant. So you hear about people tearing these all the time, like your Achilles tendon, your ACL. And you most often hear about athletes tearing these, especially football players, basketball players, but this can truly happen to anyone. So if you look on the right there, that upper image is a tendon, which connects muscle to bones. Think about your Achilles tendon that runs from your heel to your calf. And then the bottom image is a ligament, which connects bone to bone, like your ACL and your knee. And so for some people, they can recover tissue from other parts of their own body, what's called an autograft, to be able to heal that injury. But when that's not an option, people rely on donor tissue to be able to restore their mobility and ease the pain and get back to healing and get back to peak performance. I'm about to show you another image of a tissue transplant that we think is fascinating. We give an image warning because there's blood and stitches. So if you don't want to look, that is more than okay. So you may look at this image and think that someone's entire outer ear was recovered and then transplanted it onto this individual. What's really fascinating about this is that this is cartilage from somebody's rib cage that was recovered and then structured and reconstructed into the shape of an outer ear. And so again, while this may not be life-saving in the same way that organs are, it is absolutely life-changing for people. So imagine you lose your ear in an accident. Beyond how painful and scary that would be, you wouldn't be able to hear as well. You have to think about debris getting into your ear canal. Wearing glasses is harder, wearing masks, earbuds. There are so many things that we take for granted every single day that tissue transplant really highlights for us. And it also shows how far the field of transplant science has gone, and that there are so many creative ways to utilize recovered tissue to drastically improve the quality of life for so many individuals. With signing up, you can register through the DMV. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, you can say yes there. You can also sign up on your iPhone Health app or online. So we're going to give you that RAC card at the end of the presentation. There's a QR code that you can scan. In the state of Oregon, you only need to be 13 years old or older to register. There are no other factors that prohibit someone from registering as a donor. Even if you have cancer, even if you're HIV positive, it does not matter. We encourage everyone to sign up because at time of death, as you've learned, it's a very thorough medical evaluation. Doctors are ultimately going to be the ones making the decision to see if your organs, eyes, and tissue are viable for transplant. For the iPhone Health app, that is going to be registering through the National Registry, and you have to be at least 15 to sign up through there. Something to keep in mind is that at the DMV, it is all or nothing. So if you say yes at the DMV, you're agreeing to everything. However, if you sign up online, you can designate if there are certain things that you want donated versus not. So you could say, I am comfortable donating everything except my eyes, and you could designate that online. Let's say that you've already signed up at the DMV, you can re-register online 100 times. And what's going to happen is that OPO will respect your most updated registration. That will be your most current registration, so you can change your mind many times if you'd like. The most important part is having a conversation with your family. So in the video that we showed you, it talked about authorization. And so when someone is registered as a donor, assuming that they're older than 18 years old, that is a legally binding decision. And OPOs and hospitals are required to respect that decision and honor that patient's autonomy, because that's a decision that they made while they were alive. However, if you're younger than 18 years old, whether you're registered or not, ultimately, it is your family's decision. So it's really important that your family understands what your decision is, regardless of what that decision is. If you want to be a donor, if you don't want to be a donor, you won't be able to advocate for yourself because you'll be in a critical condition. You want to make sure that your family can advocate for you and understand what your wishes are so that they can be respected. It's also incredibly traumatic to lose a loved one. Having to make a decision as big as organ donation during an already stressful and traumatic time can just cause extra stress, extra burden on your family. And so we really cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have a conversation with your family. Take home that RAC card and tell them, hey, we talked about this in class today. What are your thoughts on organ donation? Are you registered as an organ donor? How do you feel about it? And just have that open conversation. And lastly, by signing up, you can help those in your community, especially people from your same racial and ethnic background. And so I'm about to show you this video that our department created that kind of talks about this. You know, we talked about how race and ethnicity are not factors that are considered with matching people. However, this video is going to talk about how race and ethnicity do still play a really important role in the organ donation and transplant process.
Did you know that over 100,000 people are waiting for an organ transplant? More than enough to fill all of Disneyland. I told you there's a solution to reducing that number. Organ donation saves lives. In fact, one person has the power to save up to 8 lives. Let's donation and how you can offer help and support to those in your community who are in critical organ transplants. Currently, over 60% of those waiting for an organ transplant are Black, African American, Latinx, Hispanic, Indigenous, Asian American, Pacific Islander, and other communities of color. Multicultural communities are most in need of transplants, often due to health conditions such as diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. This is largely influenced by years of discrimination, inadequate care, poor access, and healthcare policies that disadvantage people of color. Donor organs are matched with waiting recipients based on a number of criteria, and although organs are not matched according to race and ethnicity, transplant candidates have a better chance of a successful outcome if there are more donors from their same racial and ethnic background. On average, people of color wait longer than other transplant candidates for kidney, heart, and lung transplants. These healthcare disparities reinforce the need for more individuals of diverse communities to register as donors. And the need is so great, even though 60% of the transplant waiting list are people of color. Only about 30% of all organ donors are from multicultural communities. This is why increasing the diversity and number of registered organ donors will improve access to life-saving organs and ensure recipients receive the best match possible for a successful transplant. So why don't more people register as organ donors? Misinformation and medical mistrust play a huge role in someone's decision not to register as an organ donor. That's why it's critically important to know the facts so you can consider your decision to save lives as an organ donor. So what are the facts? Let's talk about those too. Healthcare professionals do everything they can to save their patient's life, no matter their donation decision. Organ donation takes place only after all efforts have been made to save a patient's life. Organ donation does not cost the donor's family any money. All major religions support organ donation and consider it a final act of compassion and generosity. Anyone can sign up as an organ donor, no matter their health status, physical ability, sexual orientation, and gender identity. An organ transplant means someone gets a second chance at life. It means being able to leave their house, no longer connected to a dialysis machine, and freely spending time with friends and family. Registering your decision to be a donor is easy. You can sign up to save lives at the DMV when getting your license or ID card, on your iPhone health app, or online at cascadelifealliance.org.
Great. So does everyone understand that distinction, that although race and ethnicity are not factors considered with matching donors and recipients, that when we have more diversity in the donor pool, if you happen to match with someone of a similar racial and ethnic background, transplant outcomes tend to be more successful. Does that make sense to everyone? Great. Awesome. So ultimately, we know that people are saying no to donation, even though we're giving people a lot of facts. People still don't feel comfortable with it. So let's take a minute to do a quick parent share, talk to the person next to you. Why do you think people say no to donation? And you can come up with reasons that are, maybe ones that you feel yourself, ones you've heard, or just your best guess. So let's take 2 minutes and discuss that right now. And then this time I would call on each group, write it down on the whiteboard, and I'll go through each one. Great, so you guys came up with a really good list. These are the ones that we've come up with as a community outreach department, the ones that we've heard the most from community members. So first is desire for dignity and respect. There's a big misconception that, the hospital is not going to treat you as a full individual human. They're just going to treat you for your body parts, prioritize other people over you. And that is not the case at all. We think all the time about how selfless these people are. We honor their lives. We honor this really selfless decision that they've made to save the lives of other people when they themselves have run out of options. And so you are treated with so much dignity and so much respect. And we collaborate a lot with their family as well to make sure that everyone's feeling comfortable and on board. Fear of pain and suffering is a big one as well. People tend to not understand the difference between brain death and being in a coma. So if you are going to donate your organs, it has been proved through so much testing, you are clinically and legally dead. You have been declared dead by the medical team, and the medical team is completely separate from the organ procurement organization. So your care is not at all taken care of by the OPO, it's completely separate. And so if you are an organ, eye, and tissue donor, you are not going to feel anything, you are not going to suffer, you will not feel pain because you will be dead. People are also concerned about disfigurement of the body, that you won't look like yourself after the recovery, that they're going to chop you up, that you can't have an open casket funeral. All of those things are untrue. If you are an organ donor, it is a single incision from the top of your chest down to the pubic bone. They recover what they can, and then they will sew you back up. So when the donor is fully clothed, there's no evidence of the procedure. If you donate eyes and you donate tissue, even if it's skin, with eye donation, they will actually use prosthetics to maintain integrity of the face. And then for tissue donation, if they recover any skin, they will not take it from any visible places. They won't take it from your face or your hands or your arms. It would be from your back, maybe the back of your thighs. So again, it will not be visible when the donor is fully clothed. Illegal organ trade is another concern that people have. Selling and trading organs in the United States is strictly prohibited, very illegal, and there is no evidence that there is a black market in the United States for organ donation and transplant. The organ donation and transplantation system are heavily regulated. The organ donation process is the most regulated process, medical process in the US. And so there's a lot of documentation and rigorous standards that OPOs and transplant centers have to meet and report to the federal government. Religious beliefs comes up a lot. People assume that their religion does not support organ donation. And in that video, we talked about how most major religions do in fact support organ donation. And so while we would never disagree with somebody because you are the expert, you know your religion best, we do encourage you to have an open conversation with your spiritual or faith leader, just so that you can know for sure. Even if you think the answer is no, we really encourage you to have that open conversation. Worry of additional cost. People are worried that because they'll be in the hospital for longer, because of the recovery process, that their family will have to pay for that additional time. Anything after death has been declared and that person has been approved for organ donation, all of that time in the hospital will be completely covered by the organ procurement organization. Even if the family were to receive a bill in the mail from the hospital, they would send it to the OPO and the OPO would cover it. And lastly, compromised medical care. This is the biggest fear and misconception that we hear from students and in the community, that if you are registered as an organ donor, you will not receive the same medical care as someone who is not a donor, as if you'll have a target on your back, that they won't try to save your life so that they can prioritize people on the transplant wait list. And there are so many reasons why this is not the case. And it takes into account most of these. So again, your medical team, the hospital team, and the organ procurement organization are completely separate. The OPO is only contacted after all efforts have been exhausted to save your life. So the doctor's number one priority is going to be saving your life. They are not thinking about organ donation. Furthermore, doctors do not have access to your registration status. They do not have access to the registry that is highly confidential and highly regulated, and only OPO staff have access to that information. Even if it's on your driver's license, that's not necessarily enough evidence that you are in fact registered, because everything is digital now. And lastly, the doctors are the ones who are declaring death, not the OPO. They made an oath to do no harm, to save people's lives as much as they can, and they are going to commit to doing that. So again, there are so many safeguards in place to prevent anything like that from happening. Any questions? And this is your final opportunity to ask any clarifying questions before we get into an activity. Perfect. Lastly, before we actually move on to that activity, we're going to talk about living donation. So who here knows Jesse Eisenberg? Has anyone seen The Social Network or Now You See Me? Yeah. So he's a famous American actor. Maybe you recognize him in this photo. He is extremely passionate about organ donation and giving back altruistically. So in December of 2025, very recently, he actually donated one of his kidneys to a stranger while living. And so with living donation, you only need one kidney to survive and actually live a really healthy life. So living donation is when you donate an organ while you're still alive. You can donate one of your kidneys, you can donate part of your liver, a small section of your pancreas or intestine, and you can donate a very small portion of your lung called a lobe. The procedure is very safe and minimally invasive. The recovery time is around 1 to 3 weeks, and donors continue to lead healthy lives post-op or post-operation. It is not the same as deceased organ donation. It has nothing to do with the OPO or the donor registry. So if you register at the DMV or online, that's completely separate from living donation. That does not mean that you consent to donating one of your kidneys, for example. And generally, you have to be at least 21 years old to participate. So if this is something that calls to you and feels important to you, you would go through a living donation program. For example, OHSU has a living kidney donation program. And so that is a completely separate process. It's a really thorough medical evaluation to make sure that you are, in fact, suitable to go through a procedure like that. Okay, now it's activity time. This is where we recommend plugging in a class activity. And so what you would do is go to that supplemental materials glossary that we provided for you. It gives you a complete layout of all the different activities that we have for students with descriptions and where to access them. And then after the activity, if you have time, this is where we recommend plugging in a guest speaker or watching this video. If you have a guest speaker, like a volunteer storyteller in your classroom, click here. That's going to take you to this slide that just shows guest speaker. You can have that on in the background while people are listening to the storyteller. If you do not have a storyteller in your classroom, then we absolutely recommend watching this video just because, as we know, donation and transplantation stories, lived experience is what moves people the most and is what connects everyone the most to this topic. So we are going to show you that video now.
My name is Shayla Williams. I'm 29 years old and I had my liver transplant about 7 months ago. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis when I was 3 years old. So I've been in and out the hospital for that my entire life. When I was younger, I was just like, hey, you know, I got this. Like, I'm not gonna show everybody that I was sick. So however I can push through this like a normal kid, that's what I was gonna do.
I'm Sandy Muller, and Alex was our 16-year-old son. He shoved every amount of life that you can into those 16 years. Just a few short hours after we had to say goodbye to him. 5 people, their lives were changed and extended and saved by my child. He would be proud to know that he helped a father and grandfather come back to life and help a mother of 5 children continue her life and be able to hopefully see her grandkids one day.
I was a very outdoorsy kid, liked to play every sport that there was, whatever season it was, that was my favorite sport. Found out that my kidneys were functioning at about 10%. I was diagnosed officially with kidney failure and got put on dialysis. Plug into a machine every night. I had to be hooked up to it for 8 hours, so I was a freshman in college with a bedtime.
In 2014, that's when I kind of noticed things were getting really bad. I was really sick. I was just really nauseous. I had problems with the bathroom on a regular basis. And watching everybody live normal lives, I'd question it many times. Like, why was I chosen to go through this? I just knew that I wanted to keep going. After I had my son, that's when I noticed things really started going downhill. I'd go through waves of being okay, and then down again. The last bit of energy that I had, I made sure I spent it on my son. But it wasn't anything super adventurous like a little boy would want to do. I didn't have energy to hike. I didn't have energy to go camping. I was in so much pain. I didn't know if I was gonna make it. I was so sick at that time. Like, there's a chance that I could not be here for my son. When I got my driver's license, I did not sign up to be an organ donor. I thought it was scary. I was like, I feel like I'm just setting myself up. But little did I know that I was going to end up being in that position of needing an organ donor.
I remember as a high schooler getting my license and seeing that and kind of thinking that I didn't want to have my body chopped up and give away my organs.
And it's not like you're signing your own death certificate, for heaven's sakes. You're not saying, oh, I'm going to die tomorrow, gotta give those organs away. You mark a box. Like, it's that simple.
I felt guilty. I felt guilty going into needing an organ and knowing that I didn't sign up to do the same. Today is the day I get checked into the hospital. They say this is going to be a new beginning for me, and I believe them. But then again, it's hard to believe. I've been doing this for so long. You're going to feel the light of cane. I remember being prepped. I remember I told my mom to take another picture. I wanted to document it all. I always wanted to make sure I'd be able to tell the story.
After Brian and I broke down, and I don't know how long of a span that was, of course, but I was just like, if we can't take him home, then we at least have to save someone else from this pain. Losing my child is the world's worst pain, but at least I have the opportunity to listen to his heartbeat again, because it's only 3 hours away from us. I know who has it, and I know for a fact that when we meet in person, I will be taking my stethoscope and I will be listening to my child's heartbeat again.
My donor has given me the ability to be here for my family, my friends, and my son. I get to enjoy every single season and not feel like I'm being held back from anything. If I was talking to my younger self when I was getting my driver's license, I would have told myself, you can't think about yourself in this moment. You've got to think about other people, because you never know what your path is going to be.
I know that that can be a heavy emotional video, and it's totally okay to feel whatever you're feeling. And the reason that we show this video is because, we're showing so many statistics, so many facts, but ultimately, what moves us the most and what connects us to the mission the most is hearing these testaments from people who have lived it. No one ever thinks that they're going to need a transplant. No one ever thinks that they're going to become an organ, eye, or tissue donor. And so it's best to be prepared. It's best to be informed and really take that decision carefully and thoughtfully and heavily. And so as a teacher, you can lead a reflection here with your students. This is up to you. You can ask them questions of, which part struck you the most, what stood out to you the most, what are you left wondering about, any sort of reflective questions. You can lead a class discussion, or you can just leave it at that. This is a guest speaker slide. So just to summarize it all, you have the power to save lives. There are over 109,000 people on the waiting list for an organ transplant. 13 people are dying every day waiting for an organ transplant. One decision can save so many lives. You can save up to 8 people through organ donation, up to 125 healed or saved lives through tissue donation. And anyone can register as a donor as long as you are 13 years old or older in the state of Oregon. Do not rule yourself out, rule yourself in. Some resources for you all if you have more questions or you're interested in learning more. You can go to the DMV website, the Cascade Life Alliance website, follow them on Instagram, go to Donate Life Northwest's website, get some more resources and stories. And if you're feeling interested or moved by this topic, you can start a SODA chapter. And SODA is Student Organ Donation Advocates. It's essentially like starting a club at your school. So this is a national organization. You apply to start the chapter at your high school or your college or whatever it is. And the goal is to register people as organ donors and educate fellow students about this important topic. If you are interested in going to college, getting a job, entering the medical career, anything, this is a really excellent way to gain some leadership opportunities, volunteer hours. You receive funding from them, and it looks really, really good on a resume. So you can scan the QR code in that flyer right there, or you can go to sodanational.org/students. Lastly, let's take some time to complete this survey to give feedback. So this is a great way for Cascade Life Alliance to get feedback directly from students. We care so much about students' feedback with this topic. Not only do we want to make this easy for teachers, we want to make sure that this is working for students. Was it engaging? Did they learn something? How do they feel about the content? Are they going to talk to their families? So we cannot emphasize how important it is to give your students at least 5 minutes to either scan this QR code with their phone, but if phones are not permitted in the classroom, if you go to the Teach It Yourself kit, we have all the instructions on all the different ways that you can distribute this feedback form to your students. But please, please, please make sure that your students give us this feedback on the presentation. Then I will open it up for a Q&A session. We really recommend referencing the FAQ document that we created for educators. That is all the most comprehensive list of questions that we've received. If you get a question from a student that you don't know how to answer, or it's not outlined in the FAQ document, make sure to write it down and email it to us, and we will get back to you with the proper information and the resources to answer it. And lastly, don't forget to distribute rack cards and swag. So as a reminder, in order to get rack cards and swag for your classroom, it's really important that on the Teach It Yourself kit, the first page is a request form. You have to submit a request form each time that you plan on presenting this in a class cycle. So let's say that you have 5 classes in one semester that you plan on teaching this content to. You don't need to submit it 5 times. But let's say that you teach this content once a semester, make sure that you are submitting a request form classroom cycle so that we can send you swag and so that we can also keep track of which schools are utilizing this content and so that we can support you as best as possible. I really hope that this was a helpful resource for you all. If you have any questions or need any additional support, you need any help, any questions, additional training, we are here for you. We want this to be helpful. We want to support you. We want to lighten the load. We know that this is another topic that you have to add to your curriculum, and we are here to help you through that. So feel free to email us at claoutreach@ohsu.edu. You can go to cascadelifealliance.org and continue referencing the Teach It Yourself webpage. Thank you so much for all of your efforts. Thank you for watching this presentation.